are tied to a market, tied to a radical market mechanism. All the left didn't realise is that capitalism does have a tendency to clear the market at the lowest level of consumption, at the lowest price. The idea that capitalism is right-wing per se, which the moderate right and the left have basically agreed with each other on for most of the last century, isn't entirely true. We have a situation now where the capitalism is failing and the left-wing ideology is poisoning us to death. And we have a choice. We have a choice to do something about it or nothing about it. My choice is to stand up here. Most people who went to the university I did will do nothing. Will do nothing at all. They're hiding, they're frightened, they're terrified. They are terrified. Not just a few anarchists and a bit of a punch-up in the East End, but they are morally terrified to oppose what exists. It's an extraordinary moral fear in the people that once seemed to fear nothing, you know, in battle and this sort of thing. But it's now as a sort of new type of courage is acquired. And we'll see if the Welsh or the English or the Scottish or the Irish have it. And that's a sort of moral courage, basically, to stand up against an elite and its false values, like people did in Eastern Europe during the era of Soviet occupation. They didn't like Solzhenitsyn and Sakharov then, you know. When you saw one of those dissidents coming towards you, you think, oh no, it's one of them. Because the secret police will be watching, everyone will be watching. You do everything to, you know, make sure that this bloke didn't acknowledge you in the street, and this sort of thing. Of course, after the transformation, they will say, oh, Andrea, you know, and Alexander, my brother, and this sort of thing. Not in the days when it mattered. And this is partly what it is. Now, in the West, we fought for freedom of speech, and we don't have any, even in our own country. We fought against foreign European dictators, and we're dictated to by liberals who own the media and who appear every night. We say the slightest thing about what's gone on that aren't in terms that can entrap us in relation to all the laws that have been passed, and we're a villain and a demon, you know, that needs to be dragged off somewhere, and this sort of thing. Whereas the real villains are those sitting in the House of Commons, and sitting in the House of Lords, and sitting in the European Parliament, and sitting in the judiciary. One of the things that interests me is the Archbishop of Canterbury recently. The Archbishop of Canterbury said that Sharia law should be introduced into this country. After a good church supper at sort of in Canterbury, pushes the plate away like he's in an Oxford college, and says, Sharia law, picking his teeth, you know, Sharia law. What do you think about that then? I mean, not the hands off, the testicles off, the head off, no, none of that. Just a bit of jurisprudence, just for property laws between people. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think, Canon Carruthers Smythe? What do you think about that? A bit of Sharia law. And he says, look, you know, I'm not a Christian. But the Archbishop of Canterbury is supposed to guard the faith which he says he's the leader of in the national society, which he says he's the major spiritual minister for. And he's prepared to give it all away, just as an idea, just as a sort of academic idea. He's just floated this idea over dinner, just get a bit of chicken out of my teeth, you know, this sort of idea. And this is because he's another Blair appointee. He's one of these endless wets and liberal weaklings that are sort of mildly self-detesting, would all regard us as monsters linked to the past and the politics of identity, these appalling reactionaries. I don't want to be anywhere near them, you know, this sort of thing. This is their attitude. But the truth is that they don't believe in the identities they even profess. They believe in deconstruction and theories like this in academic life. They've got rid of all these things. These people think England and Wales and Ireland and Scotland and Britain is a puddle. It's a puddle. I want to step out to the world. I want to go global. Well, I've got a message for people like the Archbishop. One of his predecessors who actually criticised him on the issue of Sharia law, Carey, he went to the Sudan. And when he wanted to fly over the Islamist part of the Sudan, the Islamic government, they said they'd shoot his plane down. And he said, what? I'm a man of the cloth. You're the man of the book. You're going to shoot my plane down. He said, you're giving succour to our enemies in the south. And he said, all right then. You know, so he went round another way. He went round the circuitous route. And he arrived, and there were 100,000 black southern Sudanese, all Christian, and all had their machetes and their pangas out, these enormous meat axes that they used to cleave an opponent through. And they're all chanted and chanted. They're members of a group called the Sudanese Liberation Army, the SLA. And they all came up to him and they chanted through their languages, which was relayed to him by our interpreters, of course. "O great white father, O great white father, tell us how to kill the Muslims and rape their women." Yes! And this was a form of interfaith dialogue that Carey wasn't too experienced of. This was a form of ecumenism of the sort he hadn't experienced before. And he was shocked, deeply shocked. Because what these ninnies don't believe is that the world is not constructed as they imagine it to be. That it's not a nice place. That it's a place of fury. And as our people drag their sort of Asda bags, sort of through the puddles in the rain, they've got to realise that although the Sudan's a long way away, that there are realities there that are closer to what may be coming for all of us than they would like to imagine. There's no such thing as a free lunch, there's no such thing, to quote a novel from the 60s, as a naked lunch. You've often got to seize the plate to get a bit of lunch in this life. No other group will stand with us and will give us house room if we fall. The groups in this world that people have less respect for are those who once ruled, and we once ruled a quarter of this earth. And they then fall away. And they then fall away. And the others get there to kick you on the way down because they remember when you were up there. And that's going to happen to America very soon. We must be certain it doesn't happen to us.
Yeah.
We need to revive as a people. We need to show some vigour and some strength again. We need to show some will again. We need to show some patriotism again. As our people huddle before the conformity of the television, some of them secretly think these thoughts. It's time no longer to be secret about them. It's time no longer to be sort of locked in rooms with mildly quote-unquote incorrect thoughts. People have to ventilate those thoughts. And they begin in their own life. This idea individuals have no power is false. If you say no to political correctness, the liberal ideology that surrounds us, in any way, from the smallest thing, it has an effect. It creates a space around you. People go, "Oh God, he's one of them," and they sort of slightly move away, It's sort of, when you start in one area, it feeds upon itself. All people begin, in a sense, a radical direction, less radical, at the beginning or the commencement of it. That's where our people are, faffy, confused, broken down, alone, wondering what's going on, wondering if they can move to escape it, wondering if they sort of, the buyout deal on their mortgage is safe or not, worried, trusting the political class. One of the interesting things that has happened is that the breakdown of the class loyalty to the big blocs is ongoing and radical. There's part of the white working class now that loathes and detests Labour. To a degree, many Labour councillors and politicians will be frightened to know. That's why they don't go on those estates anymore. They're frightened to go on them. They're frightened to go on them. And yet everyone sort of knows that, in a way, all three parties have merged into each other. That they will support each other as they do in the GLA. The British National Party got one member elected to the Greater London Assembly, and all the others, Green, Tory, Labour, Liberal, when Barnbrook, who's our councillor there, goes in the building, it's horror. Horror. It's a leper has appeared before us. Johnson puts his fingers over his eyes. He doesn't even want to acknowledge the chap in the room. When certain far-right people were elected to the European Assembly, whenever a member of the Austrian Freedom Party came in the room, Robin Cook, when he was alive, prior to an unfortunate visit to a Scottish mountain, used to turn his back. Rather than acknowledge their presence in the room. But that's also fear. They're frightened.
To the truth.
They're frightened what might be coming for them because of what they've given away for people like that. Because ultimately, although they're strong now, they're paralysed with fear. They're paralysed with fear. They wonder whether the liberal world that they've brought about has been a mistake, and that certain great simplicities, as Enoch Powell called them, may resurface around them. Canute went to the beach many centuries ago and put his throne down and commanded the sea to stop, and it went up the beach behind him. King Lear is based on that quote-unquote mad monarch. We must make sure that those who are ruling this country now don't rule it in 20 years' time, otherwise we won't have one. We must make sure that we revive across the United Kingdom, in England, in Wales, in Scotland, in Ireland. We must make sure that patriotism is no